Because they would check to see if that was, because
Right.
they didn't like home gatherings.
No, they wanted to make sure this was a legitimate birthday party.
Can you imagine the loss of that freedom?
It just boggles my mind. They talk about not having access to Christian literature. And Alexei would, every time he got a pamphlet or a book, he would copy it by hand so that he would have a copy and could pass it on to someone else. And all of his literature he kept in an iron chest buried in the backyard so that the communists would never find it.
And do you think that could happen here?
You know, I certainly hope not.
But I heard there's laws that they're trying to pass that will make things like that happen. Wouldn't that be a sad?
That would be a very sad day for our country.
We need to pray, people. We really need to pray more than ever. Prayers, let's see here. I met the bone eater.
I meet the bone eater. This is a story that Lena, the daughter, tells of going to school and her 4th grade teacher, whose last name translated to bone eater, harassed her, persecuted her, humiliated her.
How did he persecute her?
For example, if the class didn't do well, she would say, Lena, stand up, let's see your knees. Were you praying? You didn't pray enough. Or Lena, when you're in heaven and you look down on all of us in hell, will you put salt and pepper on us because we'll be frying? Just mocking her constantly in front of the class. And Lena would talk about just slinking down in her seat, just beaten in her spirit by this woman's unrelentless teasing and humiliating.
Persecution at home and work.
The neighbors started to notice that Alexei was gone a lot, traveling and preaching, and they'd come over and kind of make fun of the wife. You know, where's your husband? Will you marry me? You don't have a husband. You're here by yourself. Meanwhile, Alexei had a factory job, and many times he was elected by his co-workers to receive an award, but the communists said, oh no, we cannot allow a believer to get an award. So one time they took photographs of all of the best workers, and they told him, take yours home. We can't put it up in the display. So just over and over, this little subtle, or not so subtle, we're not going to recognize you.
Joy in spite of terror. Now I'm just hitting on some of the titles. There's so many here.
Mm-hmm. During the 1930s, Stalin really stepped up his reign of terror, taking away people at night, taking people off to prison camps, purging the Communist Party. And the family tells stories of going through that time, and yet the believers, where it could have been a time where they just completely collapsed, they learned to find joy in focusing on not their problems, but beyond.
I'm going to talk more about that when we come back. I want to tell you something. I know you'll enjoy it. We'll be right back.
Author Evelyn Puerto brings you the true story of a family that endured hostile persecution for their faith in God. Beyond the Rapids takes you on a journey with the Brenza family as they live through the horrors of a communist Ukraine, living through the times of Christianity being a crime. Read how Alexia and Valentina Brenza lead the family through temptations, threats, and the constant realization that their faith in Jesus could lead to death. Beyond the Rapids is a story for all believers everywhere who are concerned for the disappearance of religious freedoms, children who have wandered from God, and those who are in need of hope. Be encouraged and uplifted through this dynamic true story. Beyond the Rapids is available today for this special offer of $19.99. Simply call 888-725-8033 or log on to our website, buythebook.tv. Request offer number 241. Buy the book today. If you would like to receive your copy of today's edition of Buy the Book, please be sure to call 888-725-8033 and ask for today's offer number on the screen. DVDs are $14.95 plus shipping and handling and come with 4 total episodes per DVD. Order your DVD of Buy the Book today and call 888-725-8033.
Welcome back to Buy the Book. My special guest has been talking about a real story that she wrote about when she was a missionary in Russia and into the Ukraine. And it's called Beyond the Rapids, One Family's Triumph over religious persecution in communist Ukraine. And we were talking about joy in spite of terror, and you were saying how Stalin, you know, stepped up to the plate and did it even worse, didn't he?
He did. That was probably the worst of the terror. And the believers, well, they could have been devastated by that. Many of them learned the lesson that they don't focus on their problems. They look beyond them. They look at God and trust Him for the outcome. They may not get the outcome they want in this world, but they will know that Jesus' promises are sure, and they will have eternal life with Him.
Yes. Many of them were martyred.
Many people died in the camps or in prison. That's right.
And were shot.
Shot. Mm-hmm.
What kind of, you know, I just can't understand why people would even want something like that in their country. It didn't work over there. Why would we want socialism in America?
You know, that's a really good question. And I think it comes down to some people think that they know what is best, and they're missing the point that God knows what is best. And
I believe it's a handful of people that rules America, and they don't do what the people want, and they're coming in with their strong rulership.
Right.
The Soviets' hammer and God's hammer.
Alexei likes to tell the story of how the first thing he wanted to do when he got to heaven was get on his knees before Jesus and thank Him for all the KGB guys and all the government officials who made his life so very difficult during those years. And his reason for that is that because of them, he had a much closer walk with Christ than he ever would have had. And he sees that those trials were like God chiseling away what was extra in his life and just leaving him with that tremendous fellowship with the Lord.
Well, that's good, but I don't know that I want to go through the persecution part of that.
Right. When I think about this book, and as I wrote that, I was challenged to think, how much am I thanking God for my trials or the people that make my life difficult? I don't know that I'm really there yet.
No, I don't.
But I can see the fruit that yielded in Alexei's life.
Here's one. Can frog skin cure cancer?
Yes, at one point, Alexei's wife Valentina developed this terrible pain in her breast, and the whole breast turned black and was throbbing, and they were trying everything because she was terrified to get an operation. And at one point someone said, the skin of a female frog will help. So the kids went out frog hunting every day, found female frogs and skinned them. It gave her a little relief, but really not much. She ended up having the operation. The whole church was praying. The children were terrified they were going to lose their mother. And when they opened her up, instead of the cancer they expected, it was just some infection that was already abating. And the doctor said, "Who are you? Who are you that you are so happy and this has happened for you?" And it gave her, this trial gave her the opportunity to share her faith with those people in the hospital.
And what did they do?
It's hard to say. I don't think she ever knew. And most people were afraid to openly admit to having any religious belief at that time.
What about trapped in a cage?
The oldest brother wanted to be a doctor, and as I mentioned, he was not able to go to the university, and he had to go work in a factory. And he just felt so trapped by that. He wanted to have a life. He had this ambition, this dream. The communists were trapping him in one way, and then following the Baptist teachings and the teachings of the Bible was trapping him another way. He just wanted to be free.
Here's another one. I challenge God.
Well, Yaakov, this oldest son, told his mother, "You know what, I'm not going to the youth meeting or the church anymore unless you buy me a pair of blue jeans." And at that time in the Soviet Union, blue jeans were very hard to find, and they would have cost about his father's monthly salary. Well, the parents were like, well, what do we do with this? And they prayed for several weeks, God, give us wisdom, what do we do with our son? About 2 weeks later, a package arrived at the post office. It had come from America. They didn't know anybody in America. Because of their father's position, occasionally people would send literature. Sometimes it got through the censor, sometimes not. They got this package, and in it was a brand new pair of blue jeans.
Well, he got his challenge.